It's a time now where we focus a lot about relationships. We want to get back to a place where we love others so that we could come to that Achdut, that unity that would heal Klal Yisrael in a way that we so desperately need. We want to come to a place where we love HaKadosh Baruch Hu in a way that's full and accepting and just absolute. To get there, we often miss what really is a critical piece that has to come first. We know that V'ahavta l'reacha is so important, loving others, and Rashi says there is no one nearer or dearer to us than HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the truest of our dearest. But what does it say? V'ahavta l'reacha Kamocha. It says to love others like ourselves, like you love yourself. So maybe we sort of miss that beat in coming to a place of self-love, of accepting ourselves in totality, to be bishalom with ourselves because we view ourselves as a shalem, as whole, in a beautiful way, so that then would give context to our ability to love others, to love HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So what keeps us from loving ourselves? A lot of times it's because we know we're not where we should be yet. We're not where we should be yet. There's so many parts of me that seem so much less than ideal. And how could I really be accepting and loving of myself if I know that to be the case? I'm missing the mark, just not being good enough, or maybe I'm being too much, right? We're usually not enough, we're too much. How do I get to that place of really loving who I am in spite of everything that's keeping me from doing that? You know, every day before we take on Shema, before we commit to Hashem with that beautiful tefillah, that beautiful prayer of Shema, we introduce that with a bracha. And the bracha is Yotzer Ar. We acknowledge you, Hashem, as fashioning all the light in the world. Borei Choshech. On the other hand, you create what's dark. Oseh Shalom. How do I make peace of the two? Borei Es Hakol, by recognizing that you create it all. Rav Hirsch says that bracha has nothing to do with light and dark in terms of the constellations. We've already spent a lot of our morning prayer talking about creation, history, and the place of sun and moon and all of that in the world at large. Rather, he says, this bracha is about the symbolic light and dark. I'm confused. Hashem, I know that everything's from you. So yes, you fashion everything that seems light and wonderful and positive. But what about the hard stuff? The stuff that seems so dark? So, Borei Choshech, you create that too. Oseh Shalom, my job before saying Shema is to make peace of that by recognizing that it all comes from you. So maybe just my perception of the darkness is what it is because I'm limited. I don't realize it in the full scope of how it fits into the past and the future. So when I realize that Oseh Shalom, that you're the one that makes it all in totality, I could now come to a place of accepting that and coming to commit to you in a way that Hashem Echad, in a way that it's really all from you. I see the unity, okay? Either literally or I hang in until I will. I think that applies to the microcosm of ourselves as well. I have a lot of R. I know that Hashem fashioned me with what's a lot of light, of goodness, and we have positive qualities. But it's really hard to make peace of the fact that there's a lot of darkness too. That there are parts of me that seem so far from what I'd like them to be, and probably what Hashem would want them to be. So let's first go to the question of, am I just not enough in HaKadosh Baruch Hu's eyes? Now, when HaKadosh Baruch Hu asks of us to be what he wants, his directive is, Kedoshim Tihiyu. I want you to be Kadosh. What does that imply? Kedoshim means I want you to separate yourself from negativity, from what's not okay. Now that means that you were not always perfect. That means that you did make mistakes. There's no such thing as a person at whatever level that's blemish-free. But that you take responsibility for what isn't okay and you move away from it. You make a game plan, you get to a better place. Now notice HaKadosh Baruch Hu does not ask of us tahorim tihiyu. He doesn't ask of us to be pure, to be like we never did anything wrong. That's our expectation of ourselves, but that's not the requirement. But yet, isn't it interesting that it says when it comes to our soul, our neshama, every day we say, Elokai neshama shanasata bi, this soul that you gave me, tahorahi. It is perfect. It is blemish-free. So let's understand what that is and what it's not. The neshama itself is forever perfect. It's never tainted. And if it seems tainted, it's just like that little child that got all muddy, but you put him in the bath, the white towel's ready, that's who he really is, right? And his father is so ready to embrace him in that yummy towel, because he knows that's the real boy. He sees that clean child in spite of where the child's been playing. The true neshama, ladies, the true neshama is wise. It's trustworthy, it's trusting, it's compassionate, it's hopeful, it's accepting, it's fearless, it's unstuck. It doesn't take things personally. Our truest self is a chelek eloka mima'al. It has all the most wonderful qualities of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. But there are parts of us that are less than ideal, that may bring us to bad places, that we have to adjust and we have to tweak. So I'd like to present a theory of what those parts are about. And perhaps rather than being annoyed by them, rather than saying that we hate them and they do us in and judging ourselves for them and feeling hopeless until we get rid of them, maybe understanding them in a different frame. You know, when you hate something very badly and you want it to go away, usually it just sticks that much longer. If your shoes don't fit you right now, that's all you're thinking about. But if they do fit, if you're okay with them, you're probably not thinking shoes. It's very similar with the parts of ourselves. Let me explain. There are parts of us that seem to be us, but they don't seem to be tahorahi. They seem to be that choshech, the dark stuff. Parts that are less kind, parts that are very fearful, parts that may be critical or guilty or impulsive or addictive. Am I cheering you up enough? Right? So distrustful and shut down and just really down on us and on the world at large very often. Where did those parts come from? Were they in fact created as me, or are they parts of me that somehow became attached to me that I have to separate from to get back to who I really am and who I'll always be? So the theory is that these parts joined us for very good reasons, with very good intentions. They wanted to help us in some way. You know how you could have a friend that really believes that she's helping you, but she is so getting under your skin, right? That friend that's in crisis mode when you want to really be a little lighter, or that friend that needs to tell you every detail that she thinks you have to pay attention to, when you really just need a break to focus on the bigger picture. So the parts of us really think they're doing a good job, and maybe at one point they were, but they get carried away. And the irony is that those parts originally were trying to help us in some way, and they end up hurting us in that very same way. Let me explain. Let's say there's a little girl who's in her kindergarten Hanukkah play. Can't wait. She's the narrator. The curtain's going to open. She's going to start out with her part. And the curtain opens. She sees all the mothers and grandmothers. She freezes. She sits on the stage sucking her thumb, and she's devastated. People are laughing. She can't look at herself in the mirror. And 20 years later, she wants to apply for a job, but it entails public speaking. And she says, oh, I didn't know that. I can't apply for that job because I'm shy. What's with the shy? I don't know. I've always been shy. Truthfully, she might not have always been shy. But on that day that she was that devastated and that shamed, could be that this part came to help her, that I'll protect you. I'll never let this happen. You'll die if this happens again. So I'll make sure that you'll never be publicly shamed. You'll never want to perform. I'll make you shy. So that part of her has every good intention. It wants to save her from what it believes will be too much. But now, 20 years later, the only thing that she really is ashamed of in her life is being that shy. Someone who goes through a lot of pain, who goes through a lot of criticism and rejection. And there's a part of her that says, I'll make sure you don't get hurt again. You'll be the one to reject others. You'll be colder, you'll be tougher. But now she's dating, and she's getting rejected because she comes across as cold and tough. Someone who isn't heard as a child and has a really hard time not feeling invisible, and finally realizes that when he seems angry, then people tune in. They sort of get ruffled enough to pay attention to him. And now he gets angry a lot, but it's not getting him attention. It's just making people scared and turned off and not hearing him even more. Are you with me? So we have parts that mean very well. They might mean to protect us. They may mean to manage us. They may mean to be critical of us because they want to get us to a certain place. And maybe they did at a time. But you know, parts are like training wheels. When you start riding a bike, they're very helpful. That those training wheels keep you going so you could get a feel of what it means to ride. But what if you keep them on too long? They're dangerous. You can't stop, you can't go up or downhill, that it could really create a calamity if you keep those training wheels on past their need. Similarly with our parts. So what's the work of getting back to that core? The neshama doesn't need those parts. The neshama is resilient. The neshama could live its life fully. It could learn from its messages. It could learn from mistakes. It could get back on track. So if we hate those parts, they just keep fighting us. But if we say, hey, I know you mean well. Let me hear what your intention is. And they do feel heard, that they could then sort of move their own way and leave us to be our best selves, our better selves. So the goal is not to be annoyed. The goal is to start listening to them. What are you afraid will happen to me without you? What would life be like if I wasn't shy? Or maybe I could try to be heard without all that anger. Or could I risk warming up and not being that afraid of rejection? And maybe that'll be just fine. Maybe I'm not as fragile as I once was or as you perceive me. So I know you're trying so hard. I know you love me. But you're not doing what I need you to do right now. And I'd like to think of maybe going solo right now. So as with anything in life, listening to the parts of us and getting to know them, and then for us to decide where we want to put them, is much more effective than beating ourselves up or thinking that we're damaged goods because we have these parts of us that keep popping up in places that really don't do us well. Now, Rav Elchanan Wasserman said that all of us have a zoo inside. We have parts of us that are very difficult to control, but we need to remember that we are the zookeeper. We could decide who we need, how to feed them, right? Where to put them, how to enjoy them, but not necessarily to think that they are us or that they have to be in control of us. So that's number one. That's number one, to recognize that HaKadosh Baruch Hu sees me as my best self. And he created me to be able to handle my life, to navigate it fully. So the complications that I've sort of come to don't necessarily have to be part of that life or me anymore. That brings us to our next point. When I start thinking of my parts, I might also notice another dichotomy of Or and Choshech that I have. Think of an area where you've really wanted to grow or change in some way. Okay, maybe you wanted to gain more discipline someplace. Maybe you wanted to enter a new level of avoda, of connecting to Hashem in some way. Very often there's a part of you that really wants that, and a part of you that seems to struggle with it. Okay, I'll lighten things up, make it personal. Let's talk cheesecake, okay? Cheesecake. Cheesecake is pretty universal, right? So let's say I feel that I just have to get a hold of my eating. I have to be a little healthier, and the cheesecake is not doing me well. As much as I know it's protein, but it's not serving me well. So there's a really good piece in front of me, calling me, right? And I hear myself saying, I really want that cheesecake. And there's another voice that says, no, you don't. You don't. I do. You don't. Chances are I'll eat the cheesecake. But what if the dialogue was different? What if the voice wanting the cheesecake and what if the voice not wanting the cheesecake reversed titles? Instead of saying, I want it, say, you want that cheesecake. You want it. No, I don't. You do. I don't. So Rav Dessler says that the voice that calls you Anochi, that calls you I, is your truer self at that time. In getting to know and love yourself, notice your voices. Which voice calls you I? Which voice calls you you? I was speaking to a woman who came to me saying that she really felt she wanted to get divorced. She was so torn. There was a part of her that didn't want that, and she was just so confused, so conflicted. So I said, let me hear how those parts sound. The part that does, the part that didn't. So she said, easy. You deserve better. You deserve someone a lot better than he is, but I do like him. But I do find him to be, good and lovable in a lot of ways. What? You could do so much better. You know what's out there. And those were the voices. And when I presented this, she just seemed so relieved. She said, it's interesting, but yeah, it's true. My deeper self just does see us together and wanting to get there in some way. And that was the case in her case. The I really was her truer voice. It's just interesting. And it doesn't mean that where your I is where it'll be another day. Maybe I want to work at creating a different I in terms of becoming more. But just to hear ourselves, to realize that we're not conflicted people that don't have hope. We might just be people that need to hear our true Anochi and think about what the Anochi of choice would look like right now in our lives. That's another thing. To get to do this work, it takes time. I think in the period of time of the 3 weeks when we're focusing on others and relationships, but do we spend time on doing that work? And it's the time that we sort of have to move away from busy and comparing and really go inside. The most productive day in Yaakov's life was the day Vayivaser Yaakov Levado, when he was left alone to battle the Sar of Esav, the emissary of his very threatening brother. And we're told that not necessarily was it an external enemy, that it may very well have been the enemy inside, the enemy that brought him down, that didn't believe in him, that we all have to look at and become just more empowered over. Now the last 2 words we say every day in Moda'ani, Rabba Emunasecha, how much you believe in us, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that you see us as our very best selves all the time, no matter what. Can we come to appreciate ourselves in that way? To see ourselves in totality, as shleimim, as whole and pure in our goodness and in our potential. Now, what if I'd love to do that, but my life seems to just prove otherwise? If I was so good and so lovable and he believed in me so much, why aren't things going better? Maybe one doesn't have to do with the other. Maybe the fact that my life has Ar and Choshech, light and dark, might not have anything to do with HaKadosh Baruch Hu's love of me. So could it be that part of accepting and loving myself is realizing that the life I have is meant to be mashlan me. It's meant to complete me in a way that my neshama needs, in a way that my neshama, in a very deep way, even wants, knowing that there's bigger than right now. I heard many years ago this beautiful mashal, a parable that was on a tape for teenagers by Rabbi Zev Leff, and it made such a mark on me. He said, imagine that you're walking down the street and you see this man that just looks so pathetic, just like life is so hard for him. He's wearing this cumbersome suit. He can't breathe normally. He can't stand or sit. He has to eat this powdered kind of food, and your heart goes out. You wish you could do something for him, but you go over and say, I wish I could make your life easier. And he looks at you and he says, I'm sorry, if you want to make my life easier, I work for NASA. This is my spacesuit. I'm going to the moon tomorrow, so I'm going to be on your Wheaties box. I don't need your sympathy. And you all of a sudden sort of see him a lot differently. Maybe turn from sympathy to even jealousy if you want to be an astronaut. But all of us are in the spacesuits of our lives. Do I believe that? Do I not take my life personally in terms of thinking that it means that I'm unloved? Something to think about. That now in this time where we do see the world and wish for it to be better, but do we still know that we're being held and loved by HaKadosh Baruch Hu? Now the greatest nechama, the greatest comfort in life is that hamakom yinachem. We refer to Hashem as hamakom, the place. That we are in His place. We're being held by Him. It's not that He fits into our world. We are in HaKadosh Baruch Hu. We're figments of His imagination, if you may. And because He chooses to forever and lovingly think us, He perpetuates our existence. The only thing He asks of us is to think Him back, is to take our control in loving Him back and trusting that this is the makom, this is the place that I am meant to be in. And it's not working against me. I could be real about it. Maybe part of my avoda is to be real with expressing the difficulty, to be real in asking the questions or being real about the pain. And I could equally be as real when things shift in being real about the joy and the happiness. But my life is the greatest prescription for me in terms of my shleimus, in terms of my getting to a place of completion. The parts that I have to work through, the challenges, the successes that I'm given, that I could feel that love and embrace, whether it's Or, whether it's Choshech, Hashem, the Shalom, the completion is knowing Borei Hakol. It all comes from you. I come from you. So if I could see myself and my life in that light, and I could see you in that light, and I could see the totality of HaKadosh Baruch Hu in the way that He is all good and forever pure and forever giving, then maybe I have a shot at love being very, very real, and second chances being very real, and a third mikdash being very real, because it's always about HaKadosh Baruch Hu giving us that next opportunity, that wonderful, wonderful simcha, the joy in life of what? Simcha, I heard years ago from Rebbe Yungrai, shemacha, that we could erase what we were inside, between us and others, the feelings kavyachol that we held against HaKadosh Baruch Hu that weren't working and never had to be our agenda, that we could erase them and offer ourselves a fresh start. The world needs a fresh start now. And the one who deserves that fresh start most is HaKadosh Baruch Hu. That He deserves for us to see ourselves as the people that He created us as, the world with the potential that He created it with, and to get back on track with our relationship with Him being the relationship that He always wished and willed for it to be. So may we have the schus, the merit of giving Him the world that He's been waiting for so long, just wanting us to initiate what He knew could be forever.